Hey guys, Matthew here. In this video I want to talk to you about the loft tool. And the loft tool is a really important transform for translating curves into surface geometry. So here we go. Here's my RHINO perspective view, and I'm going to draw a line from the origin that's 5 units along the x-axis. Then I'm going to use the copy transform, C-O-P-Y, to copy the line 5 units in the y-axis, 10 units in the y-axis, 15 units in the y-axis, and then 20 units in the y-axis. So now I have 5 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in the y-axis that are each 5 units long. And I'm going to type loft. And you should get a window that looks fairly similar to this, and I'm just going to look at my surface here, and what it's doing is it's pretty much making a surface that goes through all 5 of these lines. I'm just going to OK through that for now, because none of the settings will really change because they're all flat. So here we go, I've got a surface. Isn't that neat? I'm going to delete it because it's not overly exciting, and I'm going to see what happens if I choose the lines in a slightly different order. So I'm going to choose, I'm going to type loft first, and it'll ask me to select the curve. So I'll choose this one, then I'll choose this one, then I'll choose this one, then I'll choose this one, and then I'll choose this one. And I'm going to press enter, and you'll notice that I get this weird artifacting happening on the surface. This is called Z-fighting, and it's usually a symbol that you've done something wrong. So if you're getting that, it means that you've selected something in the wrong order, and the computer doesn't know how to render this properly. But the biggest issue with this is that if I go OK, instead of the edges of the surface being here and here, one of the surfaces has moved inside the actual surface. And this is actually really bad modeling practice. So that's awful. So make sure you don't do that. Now, I'm going to highlight something else about RHINO, and I'm going to select this end of the curve, 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 and this end of the curve, and loft. And you'll notice that I get something different again. So the loft tool actually cares about whereabouts on the curve you click. So I'm saying loft this end to this end to this end to this end to this end, and I'm getting a kind of like a helixy sort of pattern there. And you'll notice that it's flipping up and down, and it's beginning to create these sort of moments that don't make much sense where the surface is outside the surface. So that's a bit weird. So that's generally a bad idea. So if you're getting something that looks like that, you need to make sure you're clicking at the right edges of the curves. Now let's do something a little bit more interesting and move some of these curves up and down. So I'm going to just move these two up, move these two down, and then I'm going to select 2 of them to move up again, and now I've got a whole bunch of curves that are at different heights. So I'm going to select them all and type loft. And now we should be able to see how the loft command kind of really begins to work. So this is set to normal. If I set it to loose and press preview, you'll notice that it's not pulled to them in its entirety. They're just slightly being nudged up and down by these curves. If I choose tight, they really like the curves. If I choose straight sections, you'll notice that it now just makes straight planes in between the curves. And if I choose developable, it'll put an extra isocurve on them. So that doesn't really do anything different at this point. And if I choose uniform, it'll just try and create a straight thing from it. So it's uniform in one direction there. So now, one last thing, I'm going to change it back to normal, preview, sweet, how sexy is that? And I'm going to choose closed loft. And you'll notice that what closed loft does is it tries to close the surface back up. So that's actually quite useful, and you might want to use that at some point. But you know, that's not as cool as I think we can make it, so I'm going to cancel out of this, and I'm going to rebuild the curves to be curvy in the x direction, and then because there are different positions in the y direction, the resultant surface will be curvy in both directions. So I'm going to change that number to 5 and change the degree to 3, and when I turn points on, I can select some of the points and move them vertically down, select some other points and move them vertically up. So we should have a whole bunch of different curves here. And now if I select all of them and loft, I should get some cool doubly curved thingy. So that's pretty cool. So we should be able to see a difference in a few of the things now. So if I go to uniform and preview that, yeah, that's how that looks. Developable. Okay, so that's stuffing up here clearly, so that's not always the best thing to use. Straight sections does the same thing. Tight, loose, again, just gently pushes towards it, and normal. So a lot of the time you stay on normal. Now, I want to quickly go back to straight sections to have a kind of a quick conversation about what's going on here. Now, a surface has degree in both directions. So at the moment, it's a degree whatever the curve is, 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 degree whatever the curve is. And all these curves are the same degree and have the same number of control points. And all it has to do is worry about the degree and number of control points in the next direction across. So for the loft tool, that's not a problem. But what happens when we change the degree of the curves and the number of control points that would make the surface? So I like that surface, so I'm going to move that across a bit. I'm going to move it 10 units across. And I'm going to rebuild these curves one by one to be slightly different. So this one I'm going to make degree 2. This one I'm going to give an extra 2 control points. This one I might leave as it is. This one I might make a straight line, so 2 points, degree 1. And this one I will rebuild it to be 10 points and degree 7. Why not? I can do whatever I want. So I've got all those curves, and now I'm going to loft them. You'll notice that I now have a whole bunch more lines on here than I did in this one. See how this one only has 1 in this direction and it looks so beautiful, and this one has all of these extra lines? It's because it doesn't make a lot of sense for a surface to be capable of going through all of those curves, because they're all different. It needs to have a singular degree in this direction and a singular number of control points, and the same is true for the other direction. So it tries to create a surface of best fit. So what you could do to begin to see this is if we go to what did we go to? Developable? No, that's developable always does that. It's really, really bad. Let's just stay on normal, and let's look at these things down here. Okay, so I can choose to rebuild it with more and more control points, which will make it more and more accurate. But it doesn't make much sense to be able to definitely maybe say I want to cut this surface with this curve. That seems really unlikely. Whereas with this surface here, I know I can cut it with that curve because they were all the same degree and they all had the same number of points. So when it's possible working with the loft tool, make sure that things are the same. The curves have the same degree and the same number of points, and it'll make your life easier. That doesn't mean you can't do things like this. It just means that geometry like this is much easier to begin to work with in later stages than geometry like this here. So that's everything you probably need to know about the loft tool. So in the next video I'll show you one more command, and then I'll show you how to use Lender. So I'll see you in the next video.